All right. So, All Summer in a Day is a science fiction story published by Ray Bradbury, who's a pretty famous sci fi author. Wrote a book called Fahrenheit 451 that some of you may have seen or heard of or even read. This story, All Summer in a Day, was published in the magazine of fantasy and science fiction. That's the cover over there on the side. It's pretty cool. From March of the year 1954. Now, 1954 was sort of right at the beginning of what's called the space race, which some of you may remember from earlier this year. A couple of you read books about it. But the beginnings of it were happening right around this time. Humans hadn't been to space yet in 1954. It's still a couple years even before the first satellite, the Sputnik, which was launched by the USSR in 1957. Still before the first living things survived space. Some monkeys came back to space. They got back alive in 1959. The dogs weren't so lucky. But in 1961, the first human got to space from the USSR. The first United States citizen got to space a month later. The first woman was sent to space from the USSR in 1964. Eventually, in 1969, so 15 years after the publication of All Summer in a Day, was the first time that humans stepped foot on a different body in space, a moon, not a planet, but someplace other than Earth. And yes, we really did land on the moon. 2 years later, in 1971, the space station was sent up and people were able to live longer term. So this story was really ahead of its time in sort of thinking about how it would be for folks to live on a planet other than Earth. In All Summer in a Day, they've got Venus. This is not scientifically accurate, but it's the way the story goes. And this is an actual picture of Venus here with the cloud cover and then an enhanced image of what it looks like without the clouds. And on the Venus in the story, it rains 100% of the time, except for like an hour or two every 7 years. When the clouds part, the rain stops and the sun comes out. There's a base on Venus where scientists live with their kids. There's a school on the base. But most of the kids are so young that they don't remember the sun. I think most of the kids in the story are maybe 9, 10 years old. So really young, 3 years old maybe when they last saw the sun on Venus. However, there's a new kid, Margot. It's a Frenchish name, so the T at the end is silent. It's not Margot, it's Margot, is how I'll say it. She's the new kid on the block. She's only been there for 5 years. So she's seen the sun much more recently than the other kids that she's going to school with. So she talks about what it looks like. She talks about what it felt like and claims to still remember what the sun is like from her time on Earth. So here's an actual picture of the surface of Venus. They color enhanced it to make it yellow because this is sulfuric acid that's sort of in the atmosphere there. So the entire planet smells like farts. So, you know, just thought that was an interesting fact. But rain is the name of the game for All Summer in a Day. It has a very dreary sort of mood to it. I'm recording this on a rainy day, so maybe that's kind of contributing to that too. But hopefully, you can kind of put yourselves into the rainy day mood of the story to get a little bit into it. And when we're reading today, I want you to be thinking a couple of things. One, how would you describe the relationship between Margot and her classmates? Do you see the relationship changing as the story goes on? And two, what kinds of sacrifices do people make for science and technology? When are the sacrifices worthwhile? When are the sacrifices asking too much? So be thinking about that both with All Summer in a Day as you read, but also with the videos from the Life on Mars series, and even maybe a little bit when you're thinking about making those connections in your own world. So hopefully that sets you up to understand kind of what's coming up in these next two texts, and I hope you enjoy reading them as much as I. Thanks.